Has something changed between the 49ers and Brock Purdy? Because the more people talk about the discussions, the more I don't like what I'm hearing. Plus, Deebo Samuel said goodbye to the 49ers. We'll talk about it all on today's Gold Standard Podcast. What is good, everybody? Welcome to the Gold Standard Podcast. I'm Rob Stats Guerrero alongside Vish Kumar, and it is a Monday evening. Vish, how are you?
I'm doing good, Rob. A lot of news since our last show. Combine week, Deebo got traded, some Brock Purdy stuff.
It's never boring in San Francisco. That is for sure. We're going to get to the Deebo stuff, but I'm going to start tonight's show by talking about Brock Purdy. The more people talk about things, Vish, it seems like something has changed between the 49ers and Brock, in my opinion. It started with John Lynch at the Combine making a point to say there are no guarantees that a contract gets done. And it was like, whoa, wait a minute. Everything anybody had said was that they love Brock Purdy and that they want him. Kyle Shanahan said, I want him here as long as I'm here, right? Remember Jed York talking about Brock Purdy, about how it's a good problem, he said, when your quarterback is one of your highest paid players. It's not like Brock's going to ask for something no one has ever asked for before, right? Like, no big deal, Brock Purdy. Now, all of a sudden, John Lynch talks about it, and it's, well, wait, nothing's guaranteed. Tim Kawakami's tweeting about it, and he's like, well, if the 49ers don't come right, ... who knows? And even today, Tim wrote in a column, it's possible the 49ers' initial offers to Brock Purdy will be for a shorter term than other top quarterbacks have received recently. What's going on? The more people talk, it seems like they're further apart.
Yeah. Well, further apart, I don't know if we can go there yet because there hasn't really been noise on where Brock Purdy stands with all of this. I remember our last show, you and I talked about what we wanted to hear from Combine Week, and that's what I wanted to hear. A little bit more on where Brock Purdy is, what kind of deal he's looking for, what he's comfortable signing. We still have no idea where things stand there, but I think the 49ers are very silently telling us what they think of Brock Purdy.
Not silently.
And that's well, you're right. It isn't silent, right? Because they're telling us quite directly, but they're telling us what they think of Brock Purdy. And I really like Brock Purdy, so I don't want to make this because I don't think it's fair to do the, oh, is he elite? Is he this? Is he that? In every show. It's a really annoying conversation. I don't think it necessarily is a good characterization of him or how good he is. But right now in this show, the Niners are making a statement that, yeah, they don't view him as that sort of quarterback and they want to pay him, but they want to pay him because he's good enough at quarterback. Even Jed York saying it's not a bad thing when your quarterback is one of your highest paid players. Like, what do you mean one of your highest paid players?
Well, when you give Nick Bosa $34 million a year, it's quarterback is one of your highest paid players. And you combine this with all the stuff, all the consternation, Vish, about
Consternation.
Jed York.
Look at you.
You know, Jed York, he doesn't like this bonus money. The bonus money can't be paid. We paid the cash spending. The 49ers are spending too much cash. You combine that with all of a sudden this Brock Purdy stuff, and it really starts to feel like, I don't know. It starts to feel like this is way more of a rebuild than a retool or anything else. Remember, was it last week or 2 weeks ago? I asked you, how does the rest of the NFL view the Niners? Do they view them as a team that has to rebuild, or do they view them as a team that just hit a speed bump last year? It feels more and more like the 49ers are telling you it's a rebuild.
Yeah, and I'm going to do something I've never done before on any show in my time streaming. I'm going to defend Jed York. I'm a Jed York hater. I always go at Jed York. But in this case, I kind of understand where he's coming from. I don't think Jed York has gone cheap. I think Jed York is more than ready to cut the check. But I think Jed York is looking around at Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch and saying, why the hell am I cutting the check and paying top money for 70%? Why am I paying top dollar to not get a top dollar product on the field? And I think he's sick of handing out big contracts to guys that haven't lived up to playing at their level that they received their contract, whether it's a Deebo. I think some of that is rubbing off on Brandon Aiyuk, which I find to be a little bit unfair, honestly, Rob. The guy was 6 weeks into his contract and he got hurt, but I think it was how he dealt with the negotiation that's given him pretty much no level of levity from the team for anything, honestly. Like, he's getting kind of dragged for no reason right now. But I think those sort of contracts are making Jed York be like, wait a second. Like, you guys told me to pay these guys. You guys said, no, we need these guys to win the Super Bowl. And I don't see us close to winning a Super Bowl. And these guys aren't playing close to what I'm paying for. He's paying Nick Bosa $4 or $5 million. You brought it up on the last show more than any other defensive player in football. And look, Nick Bosa is a stud. Nick Bosa has played extremely well the last 2 seasons. He's not played $4 or $5 million better than any other defensive player in football. And those are fair questions to talk about and ask. And look, I'm a Jed York, like, just cut the check. Like, what do you really do as an owner? Like, I am that mean to Jed York. But in this case, I think he brings up a fair point. At what point do you just keep paying for a mediocre product? And I'm not saying the 49ers are mediocre. That's not necessarily what they've been. That's a harsh statement. But I understand where he's coming from, where it's like, I'm paying for the best possible thing at these positions, and I'm getting like 80% of that. And our cheap guys are kind of outperforming that. What are we doing here with my money? And it's a fair question to ask if you're the guy paying it.
But you're the guy that paid it. You're the guy that screwed up the negotiations with Aiyuk and Bosa and Trent and Kittle.
Unless
and
he doesn't think he was, right? Unless he thinks this is a
it's his negotiators, right? Like, the reason he's paying Nick Bosa $34 million a year when no other defensive player is getting more than 28 is because they, for the lack of a better term, dicked around and didn't get the deal done until just before the regular season started. What was it, like 4 days before week 1 that he signed the deal? Like, that's why he's paying Brandon Aiyuk all that money, because they didn't sign him in February. They waited, and then the wide receiver market changed, and then they refused to change with it until they eventually did. Like, it's their own fault.
But I agree it's their fault, but I think it being their fault is why he's upset, if that makes sense. And I think it's kind of like the guy at the top is now upset because things have gone wrong, and he's looking at the people who he delegated the decision to, which, you're right. In reality, he does deserve blame. All right, Jed, I gave you 5 minutes of niceness. Rob brought me back to criticizing you, but you're right. He does deserve blame. But I think that's why he's a little more hesitant, or it's being reported that way. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt your train of thought.
No, that's okay. And I can't help but wonder how all this affects Brock Purdy. And when I saw that Tim wrote today that they're going to offer him a shorter term contract, it doesn't make any sense to me, Vish. When have you ever heard of a team signing a quarterback that they love and want to sign to a second contract to a shorter term contract? Like, what is going on? That doesn't make any sense to me. I feel like there is some information that we don't have. Something is different, because this, from York to the Kawakami, or excuse me, from Lynch to the Kawakami reporting on this, it has just gotten there's more caveats. There's more room for this deal not to get done.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why that is. And I don't know why it would have changed from, where it was months ago, where it was all sunshine and rainbows.
And it seems forceful, right? Like, there hasn't been a response from Brock Purdy, and the 49ers are almost like doubling down on themselves. Like, Kawakami says something, Lynch says something, Kawakami says something. And maybe they're not directly talking through Tim Kawakami, and he's speculating based on information he's picked up through, reporting on the team for the entirety of the season. I'm more on the lines of they are kind of pushing certain pieces of information through him to the public masses. And so under that, guys, I 100% agree with you. It is a very interesting negotiation. And I'm not as concerned, Rob, what this would do to Brock Purdy. I think Brock Purdy has understood the professional boundaries of the negotiation and all of that. But you can't tell me that this doesn't affect how your team looks at Brock Purdy, how your fan base looks at Brock Purdy, and all of those things. And look, there will be people who will do a hell of a job of explaining why an undermarket deal for Brock Purdy is actually an exceptional, reason why the 49ers think he's one of the 5 best quarterbacks in football, and why he's actually a saint for taking less money. But I think if he accepts a deal that's way less than what the market would dictate him getting, and that to me is less than Tua and less than Trevor Lawrence, and if it's by a considerable amount, it means 2 things to me. One, the market thinks that he is a mid-level quarterback, And that's about it. And the 49ers agree with that.
And I think it's going to be interesting to see, because eventually we'll hear a leak of what the offer is. One side will leak it. The 49ers, if it's, the 49ers will say, oh, it's making him one of the top quarterbacks in the league, something like that. Or we'll hear from the other side. The 49ers first offer, didn't even paid him at the 15th most. We always get word, and we'll find out when that first offer happens. Now, to be fair,
Rob, who leaks that they're about to offer their quarterback a mid-level deal? That's what I'm confused about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you want people knowing? Like, hey guys, we got this big negotiation coming up with the biggest employee on our team, and we're gonna tell everybody that we're about to start the negotiation, paying them, 15th most.
Tim, let me just read what Tim wrote, just so I can be totally fair. He said, it's possible that the 49ers' initial offers will be for a shorter term than other top quarterbacks have received recently. And there might be more mentions that Purdy is under contract for this year at $5.2 million. But franchise quarterbacks almost always get new deals with 1 year left on their contracts. Smart teams want to show commitment to the player, and the player wants the security of knowing he has the team's commitment. Purdy doesn't seem like he wants to wrangle over this, but treating him like a middle-tier quarterback would send a very weird signal to everybody.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Well read, Rob. It was the way you read it, not the way it was written.
Well, I can do a couple things well. It turns out I can read pretty well. So I don't know. I don't like what I'm hearing about the Brock Purdy stuff. I don't like the way the 49ers are talking about it. And I wouldn't be shocked at all if they don't come to a deal, Vish. And I wouldn't be shocked at all if they blew this whole thing up and just really went into
I
a
don't know that not coming to a deal is the worst case if there is a question, right? Because if there is a question about paying him 55 million now, paying him 40 now isn't going to make it better. But a season from now, if you feel like that's what you need, he's still cheap. You can go after it again this year, and you can take your chance again a season from now, and then you'll have a clear decision. It'll be black and white. Either you're going to pay him 55, 60 million dollars, whatever. At that point, it doesn't make too much of a difference if it's 55 or 60. It's actually a less difference between 55 and 60 than it would be if you're paying him 40 and you just don't feel like he's that good. Because if you're paying him 55, 65, whatever, you think he's that guy, right? Or you got to find a new quarterback. It's very simple. I don't know that not paying him, other than the weird like culture part of all, not the weird, honestly, I should say the human side of it, the culture side of it, of like, does your team feel like you're not that committed because you're not long-term invested in your quarterback? Does it get players to not feel like there's a long-term buy-in with the organization? All of those sorts of things. Will that affect it in that way? Well, obviously, this is a great point. Will he not play out the contract? But if you take those things aside and just look strictly business, if we can treat these people as robots, Rob, it's not the worst thing for them.
Well, yeah, but if Brock plays, but the problem is I don't think Brock is going to play. And even if he does play, it just, you don't let head coaches coach without a contract beyond that year, because you don't want them. It's a bad look. What the Cowboys did to Mike McCarthy was a bad look last year, because it shows like you don't really have confidence in the guy. Why should players listen to that guy when you don't even know if they're going to be there? And it's the same thing with Brock Purdy. Like, it's the same. It would be the same thing if he decided not to hold out and he decided to play, but there was nothing on it. It's just a bad look. And here's the other part of it, Vish. We don't know if this whole Jed York purge thing is over, right? They got rid of Deebo because they didn't want to pay the option bonus, right? He had a $15 million option bonus due at the end of the month. York wanted him gone. He wasn't producing. That was part of it also. But we saw they asked Eric Armstead to take a pay cut. He didn't want to do it, so they got rid of him. They asked Kyle Juszczyk to take a pay cut. He did, so they kept him. Deebo is gone. Brandon Aiyuk has a option bonus in 2026 for around $25 million. You think Jed's going to want to pay that next year? I bet the answer is no. They're telling everybody how much they want to trade Brandon Aiyuk. They're telling everybody. They're screaming about it. I don't think this bloodletting is over, Vish.
Who do you think would be the next victim? Because like the Aiyuk one just feels like they are really upset from how he handled himself last offseason, and they don't care that it smears a guy that'll likely be an employee of their team for the next 2 years at least. They're gonna just smear him.
Probably just one. This has got Parag's fingerprints all over it, Vish. I think that this has to be Parag who negotiated the deal, right? They signed Aiyuk to that deal, and I bet you he was getting crap from people around the league about the contract. And so then he started telling everybody, hey, it wasn't me. They made me do it. Jed made me do it, man. I didn't want to do it. They made nothing I could do. I mean, Grant had this story in
but let me ask you this, though. Let me ask you this on the Aiyuk thing before you go there, because I see what you're saying. I agree with it. Agreed. We both are on the same page. I don't feel like Shanahan also was one of the people that, like, I didn't feel like the Aiyuk situation, and we talked about it last offseason, right? Like, why isn't Kyle making the Deebo call or the Trent Williams call to just go get it and close it with Aiyuk? I feel like it's been expressed not just from people who are maybe closer to the front office of the 49ers, but also people who are typically close to Shanahan, that he also maybe regrets the Aiyuk deal, or he's not the most enthusiastic about the Aiyuk deal either, which I think complicates the situation a little bit more than the usual. It's just Parag doing what Parag has done for years as the whatever his title is of the 49ers.
Leaker in chief, I feel like should be his title of the 49ers, because God knows he loves to do it. I think that I think this is Aiyuk's last year with the 49ers. I think as long as I think as long as he is healthy, they're going to get rid of him before they have to pay that option bonus. Christian McCaffrey has a $10.5 million option bonus in 2026. Is he around for that? I don't know, man. I don't think what I'm saying is
he makes more sense, right? Because of his age, the position. Do you want to invest that kind of money? Aiyuk, if he comes back, it's a good player for them. Very good player.
Then why are they pooping all over him?
That's the one I don't get, right? He must have really pissed him off somewhere.
Well, that's what Kawakami has said, basically, that there's a lot of hurt feelings over, how he handled things or whatever. But like, the 49ers players could say the same thing about the team. Like, if I were Aiyuk, I'd be like, get over it. You said some stuff during the negotiations that I didn't love.
I thought it was business.
Yeah, like,
you're right. You're right. Good point. Fair.
So, when the team does it, it's business, right? When the player does it, it's personal. It's a double standard. I don't like how they're handling any of this, and I just think that this is going to be a bloodletting. I think that York is going to clean house again, and they're going to force the Niners to get good the way they got good before, which was by kicking ass in the draft, right?
Do you think Shanahan will? This would cause Shanahan to just walk out the door?
It very well could. It very well could, because we know Kyle is, and he's talked about how he's been very deferential to Jed in terms of he always praises Jed for being willing to sign these guys and all of that stuff. And it's a big deal to Kyle because he saw what ownership the negative effects that could have with his dad in Washington and how they had to draft RG3 instead of recruiting Peyton Manning and all that stuff. So maybe that is the thing that Kyle says, you know what? I'm out. This is an era. We have left the golden era of this 49ers tenure, and I don't know what we're headed into, Vish.
We'll see. We'll see, man. We'll see. Because I still look at this team, the fourth place schedule, and I'm kind of optimistic about this season. But this offseason hasn't necessarily had the most cleanest of starts in terms of what we would have hoped. But it can turn around very quickly, and that would start with a quick Brock Purdy signing, wouldn't it? But honestly, Rob, I'm interested, right? Because what if he does sign for less money? Let's say that's what ends up happening, which is kind of the best case scenario for them with him, right? Does that not still send an awkward message about the whole thing? I know people are like, oh, it's not the biggest deal. It's semantics. Like, why are you worried about it? You like chaos and all of it. I'm just looking at this like how I would look at it if Brock Purdy was being signed by the Seattle Seahawks. And he was signed for $40 million after an entire season of debate on how good he is. And the team itself only pays him that much money.
I mean, I think the team would say, what are we supposed to, we made him an offer and he took it. We're supposed to tell him no. We're supposed to give him 20 million more, like if we are, they always say to start negotiations low in case the other side says yes.
No, you're right. Agreed. I don't mean it in that standpoint. I mean, like, the perception in terms of like who he is or what the league thinks he is or his level, right? It would be a clear indictment of it.
Well, they would just sell it as he's taking less for the good of the team. That's what they're going to sell it as. And
right.
people are going to poo-poo that or see through it, but that's the line that they're going to, because that's the easy line, because it makes Brock.
Dude, Patrick Mahomes took less for the good of the team while being the highest paid quarterback in NFL history when he got paid.
Don't bring up logic and any of that, bitch. That's not what we're going to do. So we'll see. I'll keep an eye on it. I just have noticed a drastic kind of shift in how people are talking about Brock Purdy, and it stuck out to me. So I wanted to talk to you about it because you're the one I go to when I have all my crazy tinfoil on my head type.
What do you think he comes back with? I find it hard to believe that he should be not negotiating his pants off because of what 200 Trevor Lawrence got.
Well, I can't find the comment now, and I apologize. Oh, here. Wait a minute. Nope. Somebody had a good comment. It was basically like, agents know that the Niners always cave in the end. That they cave to everybody. So why would, if you're an agent, why would you sign unless you get blown out of the water by a deal? I'm not signing anything. I won't sign in June. I won't sign in July. I won't sign in August. Like if I'm the agent, I'm waiting this thing out because I know that big offer is going to come. And maybe this whole, leak by Jed and Parag is their way to try to combat that. Like, hey, we're not going to do that anymore. There's a new sheriff in town. But if I were the agent, I don't know. I think I would wait it out.
Yeah, I agree. And Cali Forever says maybe other teams paid too much for their QBs. And that's very much the case. But paying too much for your QB is what happens in the NFL when you believe that you have a guy at quarterback that you can win with.
Sorry, I just saw this comment from Rick. The Niners are pooping on Aiyuk because of the shorts incident. Remember he had the wrong color shorts on at practice?
Dude, you know what, though? It's funny that was like kind of a big deal, and then it wasn't kind of a big deal, and it was like a whole thing. But the way they've handled it this offseason, like the stray he caught came kind of out of nowhere. It was like someone looked at the 49ers roster and said, hey, you know what? I want to shit on Brandon Aiyuk today. Let me go shit on Brandon Aiyuk.
It certainly seems like all of a sudden people are banging on the guy. I mean, he came back. He suffered this devastating knee injury. The reports, by the way, in his recovery all seem to be good, that he's ahead of schedule and stuff like that, which is fantastic.
And he was playing well right before the injury happened. Like he had turned a corner on the season. He was playing well.
Yeah, well, I feel like that's a story that rings true for a lot of 49ers. Christian McCaffrey, same thing. He had just started to kind of look like himself again and then not. But regardless, Brandon Aiyuk, whenever he gets back, is going to be 49ers wide receiver 1 because Deebo Samuel is no longer there. Vish, he tweeted out a message today, a little while ago. It said, quote, 49ers know where I stand with them, and it's nothing but love. Love John and Kyle to death. No bad blood, no way, shape, or form. They know I'm more than appreciative of everything they've done for me as a player and as a man. Nothing but love with a heart emoji. So nice message.
Not even giving the guy a like. Come on, Rob.
No, God, no. Well, no. Goodbye, Deebo. Don't let the door hit you in the ass on the way out. But it was nice message from Deebo. Very cool. I like to see that. He also responded because Barrows now has jumped on the train of Deebo was overweight last season. Kawakami said he was up to 20 pounds overweight. Barrows didn't put a number on it, but said he was really like way overweight. And Deebo responded and said 225 to be exact, which who knows? I know the Niners wanted him generally at like 212. When he was a rookie, that was the target weight they wanted him at.
Right.
He never got that low. But Deebo, he claimed he was at 225, whatever, but at least according to what he said, there's no bad blood.
Yeah, look, I didn't see that there was being bad blood. I think Deebo was smart enough to see the writing on the wall this season. The 49ers knew what they needed to do. I also think there's a tertiary point that nobody's made, which is that I think Deebo also understood that even if he bounced back and had a really good season for the 49ers, they had no capacity to give him another contract, which I think is what he's thinking about right now. And he's got a good opportunity to do that in Washington, where there's a clear role for him and there's open space. The Matt Barrows thing of this bothers me a little bit, Rob, only because they pushed the entire Deebo's in his best shape this entire offseason for the Brandon Aiyuk negotiation. Then we saw Deebo for a small glimpse in good shape. And then we saw Deebo coming into the season not in good shape after he hurt his hamstring. But was Matt Barrows writing about what shape Deebo was in and all of that then? No, he didn't write about it then.
That's not
He
what the
didn't
49ers
criticize
do.
Deebo at that time. No, he refused to do it. And then when Deebo walks out the door, now you kick him on the way out. Instead of writing articles about what a great player, which he was for the 49ers, which is what you should be doing when he's going on the way out, now you kick him you jab him by talking about his weight. I don't like that.
Well,
That's weak to me. Write
that's what
about his weight when you know it's a thing, when you're seeing it.
that's what the 49ers do, Vish, right? They don't comment on stuff, and then after it becomes apparent or when it feels more convenient or safe to them, then they write about it as if we all should have known it all along. They did the same thing with Trey Lance when they scrapped the Lance package. They all knew the veterans went to Kyle and complained about it, and they didn't say anything until Trey Lance was traded. They didn't say anything for years. They didn't say anything. And then they acted like, oh, yeah, by the way, everyone knew this. Like, this is what the 49ers beat does.
And the weight is below the belt, right? It's a little pot shot on the way out. It's a little extra one. Like, hey, Deebo, take that on your way out. Yeah. Like, yeah, Deebo, you were fat. Take that on your way out. Like, okay. Like, Matt Barrows, you could have done that 80 different times this season. You didn't do it. Now on the way out, it's like, yeah, Deebo, you're fat. Okay. Enough of Matt Barrows. Coming back to Deebo,
Oh,
right?
sorry.
I think
I was going to put it on the screen real quick because I just found it. Barrow said, I'm not going to say the number, but I asked what Deebo's high point weight was last season. It meshes with what Kawakami said a couple of weeks ago. It got really high, and there may have been reasons for that. Not able to work out because of pneumonia, not able to work out because of injuries, but that's a concern. I think the 49ers had that concern the minute he showed up in Santa Clara in 2019, and it never fully went away. On the actual podcast, too, he said it was high. He wouldn't say the
right.
number, but he said it was
Well,
very high.
but he also took a shot with the simile, right? He wrote, "Hey, he was up to what Niners prefer their tight ends to be at."
Yes,
It wasn't a
that's what
simile;
I
it
was.
was a metaphor. But yeah, okay. So he wrote what he needed to write in a nice way. But anyway, he wrote what he needed to write, right? Like, okay, Deebo was not. Rob, we could see what shape Deebo was in. Deebo's a guy that visually wears his weight. But to me, two things with this, right? One, and this is where I get a little upset with the Matt Barrows part of it, is he's the one that's been most connected to writing about the fact that the 49ers wanted Deebo at 212. From his rookie year, 220 was about the weight that they felt like he could get down to the least. Now, the other part of it that he's included is that Deebo never missed the runs with Wes Welker. And that's why they confidently were like, yeah, 220, because at all the running morning, before practice, after practice with Wes Welker, Deebo could only get down to 220. And the 49ers at that point would have probably felt like he was doing everything he needed to be at 220. Well, my thing is, looking at it, when Wes Welker leaves in 2021, why has nobody ever asked the question of why hasn't Leonard Hankerson been on this guy about this? Now, right? Always make the argument first. Deebo's a grown man and a professional. This shouldn't be coming into question. But if it is your only question about the player and you just paid him a large sum of money and you know that's the only thing that you question about him, why aren't you on him? This is like the Pelicans paying Zion Williamson and then being upset that he's having too much beignet. You know that that's what he eats. You know he's eating jambalaya.
Jambalaya. I think that, yes, that's fair to ask of Leonard Hankerson, but also, like, rookie year Deebo Samuel is not Deebo Samuel after 2021, and he gets
Agreed.
a fat new contract. And Deebo's like, I ain't running 2 miles before practice and after practice, because that's what he was doing as a rookie. He was running 2 miles before they even practiced. Then he was doing practice, and then he was running after. He was doing like wind sprints after practice.
I think part of it though is like I don't know, right? Now I'm getting deep into just speculation, and it's fair to just completely dismiss all of these points from me, Rob, and you dismiss them, okay, if you find them unfair. But I think Wes Welker's personality played into it, right? Like, Wes Welker was a great player, but he was a great player by kind of making the most out of not too much talent. The guy was 5'8", 185 and not that fast. And he became a great player in an offense that suited him. He was so tough. He was a good blocker. Like, Wes Welker did the little things to become a great receiver. And I think Wes Welker is also a total hard ass. Playing from New England, just how they've seen his personality, how those videos used to be of him running with Deebo, because they used to do small clips with Keanu Martin in the 49ers media of like, hey, this is Deebo and Welker running after practice. That was that. And I think that energy kept Deebo kind of in check. Whereas I think him and Leonard Hankerson were more buddy-buddy. And I don't even question how good of a receivers coach Leonard Hankerson is, because I think he's done a really good job with Juwan Jennings, for example, with Ricky Pearsall, for example. So he might be a good coach. But with this player in particular, they lost grip on what they had in terms of, hey, like, you need to be on things. Like, they kind of let him kind of be okay not being the best version of himself. And they made that the new normal for him the last couple years.
I think blame goes on both sides. I do agree. Like, you've got to, if this guy is so important to your offense that you are making him the focal point of the game plan in Super Bowl 58, like, then why aren't you on him to, like, constantly? Like, why don't you, did they put any of that stuff in his contract when they re-signed him? Like, yes, that's fair. And it's also fair on Deebo. Like, you know, everything that you did to get to the shape that you were in. You know, if you're doing it, you know, if you're not doing it. And he obviously knew he wasn't doing it, and he knew what his weight was, and he didn't care, because if he cared, he would have done something about it, and he didn't. And so that's ultimately how this stuff ends. That's why Deebo's no longer on the 49ers, although technically it's not official till next week. We should say that, because 49ers decided not to trade him. That could be a thing.
Maybe they get John Allen still. Come on, fingers crossed.
Or maybe someone trades for Aiyuk, so then they keep Deebo. Who the hell knows? But that's why this thing has ended, and that's why the 49ers are headed into a new era of football. And we'll see if Shanahan 49ers 2.0 can do the one thing that 1.0 never did. Vish, thank you so much.
I'll miss Deebo, dude. Just one last thing. I'll miss him. And part of that, he was my favorite player. But, like, the moments that he would give on prime time, what it felt to watch when Deebo Samuel takes over, like the energy, I don't know that I've had many moments as a 49ers fan that are as exhilarating as when Deebo Samuel was, in full flow dominating a game.
It was a rare thing. Few guys that I've ever seen had that ability to take over a game like Deebo Samuel did, especially that didn't play quarterback. And he absolutely had it. Unfortunately, he had it when he wanted to have it, and it seemed like he was less inclined to want to do that towards the end of his 49ers tenure, and Washington's hoping that he'll pick it back up for them. And we'll see if he can. I think it's also telling the Niners traded him to a team that they would have to go through to get to the Super Bowl in the NFC. So that tells you what the 49ers think of him too.
And for the exact pick they didn't have, right? Like the one they lost because of their little financial trouble. It was like, oh, you gave it to us perfect. It was like they had when have you ever heard of a team accommodating a trade request, Rob?
Right. So I think you can see a lot of the things when you look at what is said, what is not said, and what is actually done. Sorry, everybody. We got to do a shorter show this week because I am losing my voice and I don't have an hour-long show in me, quite frankly. But Vish and I will be back next week. Of course, Vish, thank you for everything. Thanks for everybody that's watching in the chat. I appreciate it. Please like and subscribe to the channel. Just give us a chance this offseason. I promise you will like what you hear if you do that. Subscribe to Vish's YouTube channel as well. And I'll talk to you next week, Vish.